So me and my boyfriend like going out dancing on the weekend, which always ends with us stumbling into our favorite pizza place before joining the taxi queue. We've done this most weekends for over a year now, so we have become somewhat friendly with the guys who own the pizzeria. They know us by name and always make a big fuss over us, and offer us discounts every time we go. Now here's where it gets freaky. Last night, on Sunday night, at 11 p.m., my boyfriend and I were in bed because we both had work this morning. My phone started ringing, which was weird for the time of night, and I saw it was an unknown number, so I ignored it. Next thing we know, there's someone knocking on the front door. All the lights in the house were off, so we were clearly in bed or not in. I had another call from the same number, and then the person knocking started hammering on the door and flicking the letterbox. My boyfriend got up to answer it, even though I was a bit shaken up and warned him not to. If I had been alone in the house, I never would have answered. So he goes downstairs to answer the door, and lo and behold, it's one of the guys from the pizzeria holding two freshly cooked pizzas that we didn't order. He said not to tell the other guys at the shop, but they were a gift from him to us, his favorite customers. My boyfriend took them from him and thanked him, but he couldn't get back to sleep for hours. We just felt so odd about it. We have ordered from there once for a takeaway, so that's clearly how he got our address and my phone number. But it's still weird, right? Okay, so this happened almost a year ago. It's something that still gives me a charming amount of PTSD. I'm currently on anxiety medication for it, even though I have all the facts now. So I grew up in a small town. Just for a little bit of context, I was one of 3 children. I hated my stepdad, and I hated living in my hometown. I was determined to get the hell out of there from a young age. So at age 15, I started working at one of 2 local pizza places. By age 16, I was able to afford a car, albeit a beat-up one, but it allowed me to get on the road and make deliveries, which meant more money. So I had previously been robbed during a pizza delivery at a Super Bowl party once. I was held at knife point and had to forfeit all of my pizza, as well as my cash. This oddly enough didn't bug me that much. Don't know why. To this day I barely even think about it. But after this, I took to carrying a can of pepper spray. So I'll move on now to the incident. It was late at night, almost closing time, which is about 1 a.m. We had gotten a call to deliver 3 pizzas over to the next town over, which is a place that is out of our delivery range. But sometimes there were circumstances that would allow us to. So let me explain the circumstances. Out of all of our delivery drivers, as well as the assistant manager at the time, there were a few that were peddling drugs. A customer would have to ask for a very specific order, specific sizes, specific toppings, and in certain order, no exceptions. So it was a service policy for one of those specific drivers to make this delivery. I was never one of them, but on this night, I was. I knew the trick of the trade, so when I saw the garlic bread bag on top of those specific pizza orders, I knew what I was doing. My assistant manager at the time even specifically instructed me to get the envelope from the customer, and that he was sure they were really big tippers, implying that I would get a service fee. I didn't want to conduct this. My hands were sort of tied. Desperation does that to a person. I just wanted to finish my shift, so I took off with haste. It took me about 30 minutes to get to the location. It was in a very sparsely populated neighborhood. I went to the door and was greeted by a girl. I actually went to school with her, so that put me at ease a little bit. But she had changed a lot. She was really pretty at one point and super outgoing. Now she looks like she developed a problem, which isn't incredibly uncommon in my town. She greeted me with a smile and accepted the pizzas. Then out of the darkness, my arms were restrained behind my back, and in mere seconds later, I found the barrel of a .45 revolver placed against my head. I instantly pleaded for my life, which seemed to only amuse them. The one with the gun demanded my wallet. I saw no point in arguing. I told him where he could find it. When I didn't have enough money in it, he demanded my work money. For a little more context, pizza places will typically tell you that the drivers don't carry more than $20 in change. This is a lie. This is mostly said so that it doesn't seem like we're carrying more money in case of a robbery situation. They knew this. The guy with the gun hit me in the face when I didn't produce the rest of the money. I usually leave this in my car, and he didn't accept my explanation. At that point, I was forced into the house. I screamed for help, but it accomplished absolutely nothing. The guy that was holding me threw me onto the couch, and the girl had closed the door. I explained to them that I wasn't aware of any policy, and if they had any issue to please take it up with my assistant manager. I know how ridiculous that sounds. The guy with the gun, who was clearly under the influence, asked for one driver specifically. He asked why he didn't show up. I told him he was making other deliveries. It took everything in me not to cry at this time. After asking me some other questions that I couldn't answer, he put the gun to my head and pulled the hammer back. He then instructed me to call the other driver and have him present himself. I slowly complied, but instead of grabbing my phone, I grabbed my pepper spray. It felt stupid, but I saw a brief opportunity to get the hell out of there. I elbowed the pistol out of my face and then sprayed the canister into his. I didn't take any chances. I sprayed him in the eyes, nose, and inside his mouth. The smell of that stuff still irritates my sinuses when I think about it, and I didn't ever get hit by it. Now, I've been in exactly 3 fights in my life before this, and I got my ass kicked all 3 times. But after spraying him, I hit him in the crotch and then slammed my fist down into his face. We wrestled for the pistol for a few seconds. I managed to get it on the floor and kick it away. The other guy ran for it, but I beat him to it. Once I had the gun in my hand, he backed off and asked me to leave. I'm not a violent person in the slightest, but I'll admit that I still get joy out of the look on his face when he saw me holding that gun. I was on cloud 9 for a few minutes, but once I got a healthy distance from my house, I pulled my car over and threw up. I then realized I was still holding the pistol. Upon further observation, I noticed that it only had 1 bullet in it, and it wasn't the chambered one. He could have pulled the trigger about 4 times before I got killed. When I got back to the restaurant, my manager and I got into a heated argument over not bringing his product back. I left. Wasn't having that after my night. When I got home, I told my stepdad about what happened. He would actually later go find my manager about it. I don't know what happened, but when I got to work on Monday, I clocked in with no issues. I ended up working there for another month. Then I decided I'd rather go struggle somewhere else. I thought it was time. I have now moved 3 hours away, have my own 2-bedroom apartment, and I'm now a culinary student. Through my program, I got a job working at, you guessed it, a pizza restaurant. But it's a gourmet pizza place, and it's something that allows me to take pride in my cooking. I've since bought a gun. I'm still extremely cautious about things, but life is looking up. Since no one story is long enough, I'm just going to include several experiences I had while delivering pizza for a popular pizza chain a long time ago. I live in a small rural town in the southeast US, and it has the usual suburban developments, as well as some more outlying country/rural areas. When I was younger, just as I'd moved out of my town, I worked as a pizza delivery guy. These are just some of the creepy encounters I had during this time. Story number 1, the orgy. One afternoon, I got a delivery order for an area of town I rarely, if ever, visited. It was on the east side of town, which was very rundown and poor. An old textile mill used to employ many in that area, but had been closed for some time. The houses around this area often had failing foundations or very old, rusty trailer homes. This particular order was to one of the trailer homes. I knocked, and no one answered. I tried again for several minutes, as I could hear music coming from the inside, and I figured maybe they couldn't hear me. When they finally opened the door, it was a skinny dude with no shirt on, and he asked me to step inside. When I walked in, there was a lady behind him who was wearing a robe, and another sketchy couple standing at the back of the room. They had a boombox playing loud country music. These people were high and drunk, which I was used to, but this place was buzzing with crazy. All of them were at least 10 years older than me, and as I set the pizza down and waited for payment, they started making sexual comments regarding my body. Whenever one would say something, another would encourage them to continue. Eventually, the guy who opened the door walked over to me, and the lady behind him said, "Go ahead, pay the man." He handed me the cash and put his free hand on my arm, and in a hot breath full of natural light, he whispered in my ear and asked, "We're all about to have sex. You want to join us?" I said, "No thanks," and made a beeline for the door. I never ran so fast in my life. The second story I titled The Creeper. I got 2 orders for the same area of town I had mentioned above. One was a 20 pie order for a church fellowship hall, and the other a single pie for a residence. I dropped the pies for the church off first, then headed over to the last customer. When I arrived, I immediately noticed the house looked off-putting, dark and dirty. I was like, please let this be the wrong house. But it wasn't. There was a creepy, old, naked doll on the porch, and an empty bird cage hung from one of the trees in the side yard. I got out, grabbed the pizza, and slowly walked up to the house. I tried the doorbell, which was glowing, so I figured it worked. No one answered, so I tried knocking. Again, nothing. Eventually, I got creeped out, so I started walking back to my car. Halfway to my car, I heard psst, and turned around to see an old man with wild and unkempt hair literally peeking his head out from the back of the house. It was getting dark out, and my patience was draining, so I was not in the mood for someone playing games. I simply said, "Did you order this pizza?" and waited for him to answer, but he ducked back out of sight. I started to just turn to leave, but then he peeked out again. I said, "Sir, is this your pizza or not?" And finally he emerges. He walks up to me carrying a shovel. Of all things, he said, "Yeah man, sorry, I'm just messing. Don't mean nothing by it." To which I just responded with the total and held the pizza out. Luckily that was the end of the transaction, and I was able to get the fuck out of there. I worked the same job for a few years and had plenty more weird experiences, but then moved on to find something better and safer. If you work delivering items to people at their homes, stay safe and never go inside their house. I'll try to keep it short as possible, but stick around. One night, my mom asked me to throw out the trash. I live in a tiny residential complex, meaning 6 to 7 small buildings together, bounded by common walls and fencing. It also has 2 small parks in it, so my area is pretty safe. Not a lot of people enter here because it's a bit secluded. That night, not a lot of people were present, and I was going towards my garbage can, which is right outside the complex. It was dark when I first noticed this guy. We made eye contact, and I could tell he was struggling a little to find the address. I just ignored him, and continued to throw my trash out. He was in the darkest area of the corner. I eyed him suspiciously. I really like to help people with addresses, so he called me towards him, and said he lost his job in COVID, and now has to do this, but is not very good with directions. I still was standing at a safe distance because I have really accurate gut feelings. I asked him where he wanted to go, and he answered a location opposite to where I live. Like, why would someone enter a random complex when they should be on the main road? I asked to use Google, but then he took out his phone and said, "This is my company phone. I don't know how to use it. Please tell me how to." I just told him to type the address, and well, he already knew how to use the Google Maps because the address was already typed in, but still kept asking me how to. I didn't realize then he was trying to get me closer to his bike, but I am cautious, so I took the phone from his hand. I then started the maps and then handed it to him. He was still asking obvious questions, but I already started walking away. Then he started saying thanks in a very sweet voice that gave me chills. He was complimenting me on how sweet of a girl I was. I waited before going to my building in case he was following me. You might think, was this even creepy? But here's the deal. After a few days, I heard a similar story of the delivery guy asking for the same address from my friend. But the creepy part was that he gave her the phone and started masturbating in front of her. He even threw used tissue on her feet, wiping his semen with the tissue in front of her and then trying to touch her. Then I heard the same story from another friend, but hers was even worse. She had met the person thrice in our locality asking for the same address, same story, and then masturbating. He even got her number and found her house. He called her and told her that he knew where she lives and how he likes her and all. Turns out a lot of girls of my age group saw and helped this guy and saw him pulling out his dick in front of them and stroking it. I was the only lucky person to not witness it, and he still roams around in my area. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed those stories. With that said, if you guys did, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. And again, if you guys want me to narrate one of your stories, please leave it in the description below. I would love to narrate them, and it helps the channel grow and makes more content for you guys to listen to. With that being said, as always, stay depraved.